Hello and welcome to my Ever Messy Art Studio. My name is Keeks, and today we're going to be filming the process of making a Valentine's Day gift for my husband. My husband does watch my videos, but not on a regular basis, so I'm actually not worried about him finding out. This is going to be a really ambitious project. I'm going to try my best to do it justice. What I plan to do is recreate a painting that his grandfather Hickson made that we actually don't have. So this is a painting that actually used to hang up in my son's room, or what's now my son's room, that was originally to his wife Ruth, Mason's grandma. And this was hanging up in that spare bedroom there. And it's a gorgeous piece. As you can see, there's so many background details, bird, some flowers. And it was originally hanging in a brown frame, so I want to try to find the brown frame. And I kind of did a little road map of what would be in the background and what would be in the foreground. So I want to paint the background, try that. And then I'm gonna do it with gouache, and then I'm gonna collage the foreground. So yeah, this will be really, hopefully a heartfelt, romantic Valentine, because hopefully it'll mean a lot to him. So I thought it would be cool to first say a few things about Mason's grandpa. So his name was Jerry, and when Mason and everybody was growing up, Jerry was actually a preacher, and at some point he retired and then went into TV repairs. He also was a huge fish tank guy, which is where Mason gets it from. And he was just a really, really nice guy when I met him, but his entire house was full of paintings, and these were beautiful, like Thomas Kincaid level paintings. And he used to paint with acrylic paints, and he would just take a picture and just be able to paint it, and then he would add his own flowers. Like, he was very big on painting flowers, and almost every painting that he painted was to his wife Ruth. So there was lots of beautiful paintings that were just made for her. And that's kind of the reason behind why I wanted to do this for Mason, because my plan is, after this piece is finished, I want to write like a sweet note on the back of it saying, hey, your grandpa used to do this for your grandmother. I want to start doing this for you. And I painted this for you, both because I love you and in his memory. So I think that that's a pretty cool reason to do this painting and way to go. So as you can see, I covered the back of the page with just like a light teal gouache, and then I went through with white and gray for the trees. That way I would be able to see where they were. One of the reasons why I wanted to paint this instead of doing everything as a collage was because I want the paint to be in the background. So I want it to be a clear difference in mediums. That way we can give that optical illusion that, hey, there is a background here and there is a foreground. So that's one of the reasons why I said this was kind of ambitious, because I wasn't sure how this was going to turn out. I just kind of had the idea in my head, and I've always loved this painting. And I was like, you know what, we're going to go for it and see what it ends up being like. So I ended up doing that, and then I went back with white and painted on the branches. And once I was done painting the branches with white, I would go back over it with that gray color again and just add some shadows to it. That way you could kind of see, the branches a little bit better against such a light background, and it still pulled it from that background. I think that this was the way to go for sure, because I'm not sure that I could have created collage trees that were, number one, this tiny, because these guys were super, super thin, and I'm not sure how I would have glued that down properly. But also these branches were really intricate, because I wanted to give it the idea that, hey, this is a forest, it's not going to be empty space. I wanted the branches to cross over each other and do all kinds of things. And I think if I would have done all that in collage, it would have been too crowded, and it also would have probably made the paper a little bit bumpy for whenever I wanted to do the foreground. So I decided to go at it this way, and I think that was the best decision. One of the main reasons why I chose to paint this with gouache was actually because I have more color options in gouache than I do in acrylic paint. And I also like that gouache can reactivate and it can mix, sort of. So like, as I'm putting on these branches, you can't really see it up close, but whenever I put the shadow in, it actually kind of melts together and makes that really cool look. And then after I did the gouache, I went ahead and started adding the leaves, and I I used a lot of white in this piece. So every single color that I'm laying down here for the background, I've mixed with white to try and push it back. And I went over it with 2 layers of paint, one dark layer of green and then one that was slightly lighter and matched the background more, so that hopefully it would kind of give the semblance of fog. However, I did realize that as I was doing this, I was like, I don't know, this looks really good, but they are kind of dark. And later on, I will find a way to fix that. And I was really scared whenever I went to fix it, but I got it, yay, and ended up looking fine. But later on in this video, you'll be able to see how I chose to fix that problem. But I definitely think that this turned out really cool, and I really enjoyed just kind of sitting down, relaxing, and just painting. I don't often just, you know, have a huge block of time at the same time, and I will say this did take a couple of days to do. So whenever I was doing that, which was usually after work at some point when the boys had went to bed, by boys I mean my husband and my son, and I would just sit down, relax, paint, really kept a close eye on my master study, because really, if we're talking about this, since this is based on one of his paintings, one of Mason's grandpa's paintings, it really is a master study. So I definitely did that. And then afterwards, on a separate piece of paper, I decided to paint the tree trunks. So I started out with just like a gray mixed with white. And then afterwards, I put in a little bit more gray on top of that so that it created kind of that shadowy effect, to kind of get the bark in there. And then once I had done that, I went ahead and splattered some paint on it because I absolutely love the look of paint splatter. And I felt like with the dark brown paint splatter, it really brought this out to really look like those trees. I have been to like Colorado before, so I have seen like aspens, and to me these were really similar to aspens. So they always have these like little bumps and grooves on them that are darker than the white tree trunk. So I kind of tried to think about what I've visually seen and tried to mimic it like that. Mason's grandfather painted in all of the details. So he was, like I said, a master painter. So all of these things that I'm making that I'm going to stick down with collage, he actually painted himself, which is kind of crazy if you think about it, because that's a lot of detail. And then afterwards, I started thinking about leaves. So I went ahead and painted a huge green bit and then splattered it with lighter green. And then that other patch of green is for the grass. Okay, so I'm about to do something that will either make or break this piece. Up until this point, which this has taken me 2 days, I've got this done, and now I'm thinking that it needs to be paler, because when I look at the original image, which I'll pop up a picture of it again, the background trees are very hard to see, whereas this, I believe, is too light, or too dark. So I was thinking that I could take my white pan pastels and very lightly rub it on here to try to make this look like it's disappearing a little bit more, or maybe more in the background. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. So like I said, this could be a great idea or it could be a terrible idea. I'm about to find out. So I'm hoping this will just be very lightening. Yes, it's doing what I want. Because I want these things to go into the background and not be super noticeable. Because right now, it's just too dark. So I'm sending them back. Now this also means I'm gonna have to spray a fixative on it probably at some point, because pan pastel does move around until you fix it. So I'm just sending them back. Oh, I'm so happy that this worked. I was so worried that I was just gonna ruin this whole thing and that it was just gonna turn completely white or something. So I'm actually really ecstatic that this is working. But I think this is going to send it to the background enough to where it won't hopefully be a problem anymore. We're just kind of giving it a fog. It worked. Woo. I'm just so happy now. Okay, go pan pastels. Woo. Okay, so I think my trees are dry. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them out so that we can get the base of these trees on. I'm gonna kind of cut them sort of irregular, just because I want them to be straight, but it's also a tree. And I have not really worked on the hummingbird yet, because I think I'm going to do the hummingbird very last. Get rid of that serrated line that was there. Okay, so I think that one's going to go like that. And then we need the skinnier one. Trim this side. Like that. So it's skinnier. I also need to make this one a lot shorter. I'm just kind of looking at where these cool marks are to make sure I don't cut off too much of it. Like that. So this tree goes right about here, like this. And then this tree go right about there. Like that. So I'm going to go ahead and glue these down. And that way we can kind of see what we're working with a little bit better. And then I have parts of the trees I can start trimming to get it on there. So let's go ahead and glue these down and see what we look like. Something like that. Alright, so my phone died while I was recording, so I'm not sure what exactly got recorded and what didn't. I'll find out whenever I go to edit. But what I did is I added some white pan pastels, which I was really not certain would work, and dampened down those background trees because they're really not supposed to be that noticeable. And then I went ahead and glued down my first tree trunks. And now I'm probably going to go ahead and start cutting out the little details. So I've got this page here and this page here, and I'm going to cut those out and then be back to add these branches and stuff, and then we'll work on the grasses and the leaves, things like that. And I'm going to leave the hummingbird for very last. I might do that with an Arctic marker or something like that. I haven't quite decided yet, but we'll see. These next few parts are pretty fiddly. What I mean by that is, first I added the grass, which was totally fine, and I will say I'm not an expert at grass, so they ended up just being little lines. But whenever I went to start adding the branches and the leaves, boy oh boy, I did not realize I was going to be fighting the glue so much, because what was happening is the glue was getting stuck to my fingers, and whenever I would go to put down like a piece, they would try to pop back up again, and it was very obnoxious. And then I was getting, like, you know how when you play with glue, how your fingers get all gluey and, you know, you get the little glue fabrics on you. It's not actually fabric, it's just the glue is dried and then it acts like a fabric and tries to cling on to everything. It was trying to do that to my branches, so I was trying to be really careful with that and trying to glue them on the best that I could. But yeah, it was really fiddly, especially with these little tiny pieces that were supposed to be like little holes in the trunks. Those, I think, were my least favorite thing to put on. They look really cool, but man, they did not want to go where I wanted them to go, and that was really, whew. Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, I'm this far, and these things are not wanting to stick the way that I want them to. So you see me like fiddle with them, taking things on, putting them back off again, smearing more glue on them. And I was worried that I was going to mess up the background whenever I was doing that too. So I was trying to be very, very careful with it. And then once I was done putting the branches on, it was time to really go for the leaves. And I had like hundreds of little tiny leaves, it felt like. I'm sure it wasn't quite 100, but boy, it felt like that. And I was trying to do the same thing, and I probably should have washed my hands first because I still had glue bits on me, and I, like I said, was having a problem sticking all of these leaves down. Now, one thing that I was noticing is while I was sticking the leaves down, the leaves weren't quite as dark as I wanted them to be to really make them pop. So I knew that after I put these leaves on that I would need to go back over it with a colored pencil, like a dark green colored pencil, to bring them forward more so that there was more of a difference in how the leaves looked versus the leaves that were in the background. So lots of fiddly playing around and hoping that this was working out. But I do think that it ended up looking really cool whenever I got it done. It was just a lot of back and forth with glue like collage usually is. So I am proud I stuck with it, because there was a point where I was pretty frustrated at all these little pieces. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do this, but I just kept going on, kept thinking of Mason, kept thinking of all the hard work his grandpa put in these kind of paintings, and I just wanted to persevere and stick to it and continue with what I was doing, and I'm really glad that I did, because I do believe that the outcome looks really cool, and I'm really proud of what this ended up looking like. So if you ever get in a fiddly situation, just kind of stick through it. Remember that you are going to have an ugly duckling phase, especially with collage, and it will frustrate the crap out of you, but you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it, and I'm still very new to this type of collage. So keep going and believe in yourself, and you can definitely do it. But yeah, so this was definitely the hardest part of the collage, but I think also it is one of the best pieces of the collage, because those little details ended up turning out really cool. And then I popped the grass on. The grass is just very elementary school looking zigzags and stuff like that. And they were also a little fiddly to get on there because they were long and parts were wanting to pop up, so I was having to put extra glue on them, but it looks great. The last thing I really needed to do to bring this piece together was to make the hummingbird. And at first I was like, oh, I can make little tiny collage bits and put that together. And then I had just finished fiddling with all those trees and leaves and stuff. And I was like, I'm not doing that. I am already frustrated. So instead I decided to just draw them out using my Arctic's paint markers. And I just drew the best little hummingbird that I could. And then afterwards I went over it with some colored pencil just to get a little bit more darkening in there and create a bit of contrast. And then lastly, I cut everything out with an X-Acto knife. And I think that it turned out really good. Like, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think this is a really cute little tiny hummingbird, and it ended up looking really cute once I pasted it onto the image. So I'm not mad at it at all. For the flowers, luckily I already had some purple paper, so all I did was just drew out some flowery shapes, and then I ended up cutting them out so that I could put them at the bottom. That way our hummingbird would have a reason to be there. I do believe that the flowers that he originally created in the paintings were irises. Mine do not look like irises. They look like interesting four-leaf clovers that are purple, but I think I did my best there, and I still think that it looked pretty good by the time I pasted it on, and I'm not mad at that. So maybe next time I can work on more detailed flowers to figure out how to do that to make them look better. But I do think that overall I did what I could, and it looks pretty nice. Okay, so I think for the most part this is done. I'm really proud of what this looks like. I wish I could have done more realistic grass, but I don't really know how to do that. So I think that this is good enough. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. If you're new here, hello and welcome. Thank you guys so much for watching today. If you could like, favorite, subscribe, share, all those good things, I'd really appreciate it. But I really appreciate you most of all for sticking through with me. And I can't wait to read your comments to see what you think. Bye.